Where Loyalties Lie, Chapter 11, Confessions, by Loyalliar. The weight on Rainbow's back could not be said to come from the heat of the jungle, or the steady fatigue of her slowly returning magic. Compared to the immateriality of her burden, they were as solid and tangible as stone, yet light as the wind. The mass came from the sorrow that had slowly built with each step down the side of the three-pronged mountain. Now off the barren rocky cliffs, and back amongst the dense undergrowth of the jungle proper, it was almost enough to stop her every step. Yet despite the massive pain of her guilt, her lips were held still and quiet. Her silence might have been said to be a testament of either the sheer oceans of her guilt or the steady resilience of her carefully controlled apathy. Neither view was true. She was quiet because she had no desire to further hurt the zebra mare who walked in silent mourning beside her. Partway down the mountainside, the pair had encountered Rainbow's guide. The Pegasus had nodded in acknowledgment of his presence, but said no more. His rhyming questions were left unanswered, and unfulfilled until the whole of their recent memory was overflowing with their corpses. It took him some great time to realize that neither had dared to speak, and when the idea finally sparked, he was too clinging to the rapid condensation that was their implacable silence. It persisted from the mountain top into the village, as the sun passed down overhead, and continued its inexorable approach, marking another day closer to Luna's impending demise. As the only companion Rainbow would acknowledge, it wordlessly compared with her reflections of her struggles on behalf of that ticking fatal clock. 4 days had passed since she had reluctantly joined the honor guard, and in that time Rainbow Dash's world had fallen apart alongside the Princess of the Night. Now, Luna had little more than 2 days to live, and yet even that urgency did not seem to justify what had happened. Why had she done it? Over and over the burning orb demanded an answer. It echoed Dead Reckoning's question. Why? What unimaginable force had pulled her into that nightmarish mess that was her quest? What loyalty did she owe Luna? They were hard questions, but their contemplation served as a welcome distraction from the far more brutal lingering doubts of why. Why has he done it? Dash threw herself so boldly into the exploration of these thoughts that she did not realize the plodding path carved by her hooves until a dozen voices called out in unison, "Caribou!" Quite literally she jumped, and for the first time since awakening, her wings held her aloft. There, she eyed the zebra villagers with ire and violence, ready to strike out at the attack her instincts and her overloaded nerves insisted was sure to come. Instead, the village beat their hooves on the ground in a thundering applause. To them, the action was that of a stranger returning victorious from a battle with a great foe, rescuing a lost friend and family member. It took the Pegasus some time to realize what they believed they had seen. The cheering bolstered her spirit, though only a little. She gave an easy flip and quick spun before her wings began to demand rest. Her magic, it seemed, still needed time to return. When she landed, they swarmed her, asking questions in a tongue she could not understand. She tried to be accepting, but her body would not listen. Her wings bunched against her sides, doing their best to hold the cheering crowd at bay. They might have continued in their choking throng until her control broke completely, were it not for the sudden crack of thunder. It was impossible, surely, and for that alone, it grabbed the attention of the entire village. The air over the jungle might have borne the signs of a storm, or at least light rain, but there was no lightning to be seen on the horizon or otherwise. Stranger still was the noise had come from amidst the crowd, traveling up into the air instead of falling into the ground. Then the crowd parted before a scowling old stallion with a bleeding cut on his shoulder and a single eye that had been clenched out in a furious, bloodthirsty glare. Dead Reckoning's anger was palpable, turning the air around him into a fine and sickening haze, cutting him with a clean swath as he passed the zebras. When his clear eyes settled on Rainbow, though, his fury broke like a wave over rocks. The lines of sweat and fury faded from his face, replaced by the happy, smiling wrinkles of a stallion his age. For just a moment, Rainbow saw her grandfather. But Papa's thick whiskers were nowhere to be found besides Reckoning's brilliant claw scars. "Your laugh! Oh, thanks, Celestia." It came out airy and desperate, like a gasp, as though he hadn't drawn breath in her absence. Deadeye looked over his younger partner, and took a few careful steps forward, until he stood by her side. There he stood, analyzing her, for more time than she cared to mention. With each passing moment, more and more of his rich smile fade away. Unlike the zebras, he had come to know her former spirit, even if only for a day. The vibrancy of her personality was enough to tell him that something had changed. She knew that he knew. To her surprise, he made no comment, nor gave any acknowledgment of what had happened. Instead, he turned to the crowd, scanning their faces with a surprisingly accurately. Finally, his gaze locked onto the mare he had been searching for.
Kyongse? She fulfilled her right.
Indeed he did, as I was sure. I am not the one who doubted her.
He didn't actually say anything to respond. Instead, he gently slid a wing over Rainbow's back and began guiding her toward the center of the village. Without really intending to, she forced his embrace away. A little bit of guilt slipped out of her eyes at the action. He nodded, acknowledging her desire for privacy, even among the throng of zebras. Together, the Pegasi made their way into the fire circle. Kiansi approached Rainbow next, along with Mizungu and the zebra shaman who had leapt into the fire only mere hours earlier. The last of the three held a rack, containing 6 carved wooden bowls, their contents obscured by innate orbs of lids of ivory. Mizungu shot Rainbow another look of detached hatred, implying that the Pegasus was beneath actual anger. Trying to avoid the unspoken accusation, Das locked eyes with the elder zebra. Kionzi outright beamed back, either unaware or uncaring of the brutal battle of wills going on in her presence. She craned her name back and spoke to the herd. "This mare, who had came to our fold, has proven to her that her heart is bold. Surmounting such a task was hard. We welcome her amongst our guard. The wings you wear upon your back, inside your soul is white and black. You have saved our loves without delays, and for such an act you have earned our praise. Now, Mizungu, speak your mind for she who had brought you back to your kind." The younger zebra looked over the crowd slowly and surely, then set her gaze on her leader. Her words were not meant for Kionzi, however. They had been pondered, weighted, bladed, so they would cut through Rainbow's already struggling soul, even if she could not understand them. And what she said, "Wewe warikuai sahihihi kusuzuwao." A murmuring of confusion spread across the crowd. Without the hesitation that ought to have been present, Rainbow turned to dead reckoning. "What did she say?" He hesitated for a moment, but the pause did not last long.
You were right about them.
Rainbow slowly turned back to Kionzi, who had begun to pelt Mizungo with questions in zebra. All were met with a blank face and silence. Finally, the leader had enough, and turned to the shaman who stood before her. "We give our gift to one so brave, before she moves on with another to save." The shaman continued, and wordlessly began to open the jars. Their contents were brilliantly colored pigments in each of the colors of the rainbow. Without further word in equestrian or zebra, Kionzi and the shaman dipped their hooves in red ink and approached the rainbow. Their hooves pressed gently, yet firmly against her brow, and in a slow, smooth motion bestowed upon her head a vibrant red stripe. A dip in a bucket of water gave them clean hooves to handle orange, and so on. In a mere minute, Rainbow bore the marks of a zebra, from purple lines around her hooves and flank to a brilliant red upon her face. Though her mind was still addled, her soul still troubled, the act was enough to pinch up the corners of her mouth. "Thank you." "We deserve to be thanking you, and surely others when these days are through." Kionzi patted Rainbow on the shoulder. "South by river leads your path, but best beware you face the griffin's wrath. Once your path to the lost elk leads, be there on the word he feeds. Should he from his home you solve your quest, fly back home as you do best. But remember, for so long as you rule the sky, to visit your herd should you pass by." As he spoke, she gestured with a sweeping hoof toward the path out the village. Rainbow nodded, but said nothing more. The sun wouldn't wait for her to wallow in praise she wasn't sure she deserved. She took the wing, darting out of their sight in a tail of rainbow brilliance. Her magic carried her only a short duration by her usual measure, but the immense speed that earned her both her name and purpose made the most of that time. She was well clear of the village when she finally settled to land. In fact, she nearly reached the edge of the enormous sinkhole. Above her, the gondola elevator would bring her back up to where her journey had been interrupted. How had it only been a few hours? No more than 6, by her haphazard glance at the sun. It was well past lunchtime. Despite her only food being the fruit his zebra guide had offered before entering Discord's temple, she wasn't particularly hungry. Perhaps it was the knot in her stomach taking up all the space where food ought to have been stored. She felt a surprising gust of wind, followed by the audible sound of flapping feathers behind her. Hooves dropped to the ground hard, and immediately approached. Dead Reckoning sat down beside her.
What happened?
I'm fine.
I didn't ask how you were feeling. I asked what happened.
I don't want to talk about it. That was how it went, right? He'd say something witty and insightful, or make some sort of metaphor, and everything would be better like magic. That's what his stallions his age were for. He looked at her for a long time, inscrutably, before laying down on his belly and spreading his wings. It was then her turn to stare at him in confusion, though it lasted only a few seconds before he finally spoke.
Climb onto my back.
What?
Your wings still aren't up to flying up that cliff, are they?
He gestured to the sheer height above them. She looked upward, then back to her companion. You think you could carry me up that height? Aren't you like 50? Dead Reckoning's response was a healthy, vibrant laugh that took away some of the sharp edges of the world.
I don't know whether to take that as an insult or a compliment. I guess we'll just have to see how many ponies you can carry when you turn 68.
She was flabbergasted, and still remained still until he prompted her again with his wing. Gentle steps put her over his back, and with hesitation, she wrapped her forelegs around his neck. He rose up beneath her, then spread his wings wide, and they were off into the sky.
I imagine it's probably been a long time since you had some pony fly you around like this.
Reckoning observed, before letting out a little laugh.
Or maybe not. Do you have a special stallion back home in Ponyville?
No. Rainbow spoke the word barely over the sound of the wind rustling past her ears. He caught the little grin, half-heartedly adding another question.
Maybe a special mare?
Another of his little laughs broke into the air when she shook her head.
It's always weird for me to think that it's acceptable now. Not that every pony hasn't been pairing off that way since the dawn of time. The publicity is all that really new.
He shrugged.
Just an old guard's pony rambling. What do you want to talk about?
Rainbow shook her head no. Reckoning nodded slowly, tilting his wings wide to the left, and began to circle the sinkhole, at a level height with his rim. Where are you going?
You're not fit to go tromping through the jungle when you're too busy wondering if you did something wrong. So we're just going to fly, relax, and chat. Until you're ready to get whatever it is off your chest.
Rainbow looked up to a long time, and finally pulled the knot out of her gut. Words spilled out of her like water from an uncapped faucet. I killed a dragon.
I knew that.
How?
When you're a guard's pony for almost 50 years, you learn what some things look like. You had that face on.
He settled into a shallow descent, forcing Rainbow to slide closer to his back, until their necks were pressed together. His unkempt short mane tickled her chin.
I want to know why you did it.
She told him, hesitantly at first. She gave him the tale of the hours she had been gone, from her journey into the ancient zebra temple, to her surprising meeting with its unexpected God, and finally her encounter with the worm. Reckoning said not a word during the entire tale, letting the raw emotion and pain flow out of the young mare on his back, accepting it fully without judgment or comment. And then the spear just went into his eye. I didn't want to. I wasn't even thinking. I just needed to stop the fire, and his right eye was there. I didn't have any other way, and...
I understand.
Reckoning curved into a steep bank that Rainbow had to admit she envied, even given his age. It was well within her capabilities, but that didn't mean it was easy. When the tight turn had been completed, the elder Pegasus swept out of the steeper sinkhole and into the thick canopy of the upper jungle. There, he flew in silence for another few hundred feet, before dropping down onto the floor on the edge of the rapidly flowing river. She scrambled off his back, at which point he turned to look her straight in her eyes.
You were defending yourself,
came his first observation. That doesn't make me feel any better. His brow rose slightly.
I'm not trying to make you feel better, Dash. You killed another living, intelligent being. You're supposed to feel bad.
Rainbow found herself stunned by the words, so he continued his speech.
That's what he tells you you're a good pony inside. What you're feeling right now that you shouldn't be, though, is guilt. I can tell that it's eating you up inside. So think about this for a second. Did you start that fight?
I tried to grab Mizungu. Reckoning's gaze grew sterner as he interrupted.
Did you make the first attack?
No, but...
And did you try to kill him?
I didn't mean to, but...
No, Rainbow Dash. There isn't any but. Those are facts. That's reality. You were trying to be a good guards pony. You were trying to save lives. My life, your princess's life. Sometimes that means making choices like forcing the zebra to go home. Not many ponies could make that choice. It might not have been nice, but what you did was right, Rainbow. Do you understand the difference?
Rainbow took a deep breath and nodded slowly. Yeah, I guess. Still don't feel much better about it, though. Reckoning shrugged.
That's something you're going to have to get over on your own. Every guards pony, well, at least the honor guard, all have our own way with dealing with it. I'd tell you to go fly around if it were safe. As it stands, we've got to get moving if we're going to save your princess. Just remember what we talked about.
Reckoning then broke out into a steady gait along the riverbank, following the gentle but swift waters as they curved and bent into the depths of the jungle proper. Their path didn't go very far, however, before the older pony's machete cut through a wall of vines to reveal a small but sturdy dock tied up to a pair of canoes.
Here's our path to Falder,
the scout observed, before climbing down the bank of the river and approaching one of the boats. Its paintings and attention to detail made it obvious it was a zebra craft. It was more than large enough to accommodate the pair comfortably, and so Reckoning climbed aboard.
Hop on, we can get going.
As he followed his directions, and with another swift chop of his machete, the rope holding the canoe in place was no more, and their journey had begun. Dash sat down back on the craft and rolled her shoulders, making herself comfortable. Reckoning, meanwhile, stood in the center of the boat, facing downriver. His wings were cutting strange motions in the air, turning the craft as the speed of the water carried along its journey. How come you call her my princess?
Eh?
The one-eyed scout glanced over his shoulder.
What do you mean?
Well, I thought it was just Thundercrack being a jerk, but then you said it too. Luna's just as much your princess as she is mine. Reckoning broke away from looking at her and forced his eye dead forward.
I'm not her bodyguard.
The lack of confidence in the statement belied a lack of honesty. Rainbow could almost see the strain on his body as he tried to make himself believe his own words. You're lying to me, Deadeye.
Yes, you don't want me to answer that question.
Covered daintily, she flared her wings and rose to walk to home. The canoe shifted in water, adjusting to the change in weight. Why not?
Just drop it.
Tell me! She pressed. His scarred brow twitched, but his tone remained under control.
It's not something you'll want to hear right now. Not after this.
She rolled her eyes, but before all but yelling to his face, Just tell me!
It's none of your business!
His voice had developed into a heightened growl. Like you having your flashbacks was none of my business! It was a cheap shot, but Rainbow felt she needed to know. Fa! He whipped his head forward, turning his scarred face so close to Rainbow's that he fell backward onto her haunches. Gone was the friendliness and usual humor in his voice, replaced with a blunt fervor that seemed to border on blood loss.
You want to know so bad? Don't interrupt me!
It took a moment for him to regain control of his emotions, and it took the opportunity to see himself. The boat drifted lazily as he spoke with a calm tone that was nevertheless so full of spite it almost hurt to listen to.
The reason we call her your princess is because we don't want anything to do with her. Every single one of us joined up before she came back, and we all swore our oaths in front of Celestia alone. Then she showed up out of the blue and...
Is this about Nightmare Moon? Really? Rainbow set her teeth together. So she made it nighttime for a while and scared everybody. Big deal. It's not like... Reckoning didn't interrupt with words. The fury in his eyes leapt his body through his legs, was cracked into the air with a powerful kick. The sudden burst of a thunderous sound sent birds into the air overhead and brought total silence to the two ponies. His magic released. Reckoning slowly shook his head and set his gaze on Rainbow. For the first time in the entire conversation, it was clear that his anger was directed at the young mare, rather than the dying princess.
You have no idea what she did to us.
What?
I certainly blame you for not remembering, Rainbow Dash.
The way he delivered his words suggested that he did, nevertheless. Dead Reckoning drew in a deep breath. then released it. He turned his back to the mare and began to again guide the canoe with his wings.
But you were there.
The early mid-morning summer air of Ponyville was pleasantly warm. Not a cloud troubled the dark sky. Standing on the balcony of the town hall were 3 identical stallions, bearing golden armor over their sheer white coats. They watched over a crowd of tired but excited ponies who were making their way into the biggest event their tiny town would ever see. Good to have you back, Corporal Reckoning.
Good to be back, Star.
As the curiosity of the enchanted armor, only one of Dead Reckoning's illusory blue eyes actually directed his glance toward Morningstar.
I had to ask, why exactly am I back?
The third pony let out a little laugh. I don't see why they wouldn't want you back, Deadeye. It's not like anything went wrong the last time you were at a Summer Sun celebration. That particular international incident replayed in his mind, and Reckoning was glad that the illusionary form of the pony he was supposed to be couldn't blush or scowl at her.
Clever, Luce.
Despite wearing a stallion's body, Warrant Officer Luce Cannon was clearly riled up by the distasteful taste of use of her first mane. Her wings flared for a moment, before a smile broke over her broad white muzzle. It's funny, Reckon. I heard that's what we should be calling your sweetheart up in Cloudsdale. That's enough, out of both of you. Morningstar's command was hated instantly, a sign of the respect he commanded. I want both of your attention on the crowd. All 3 guards' ponies looked over the edge of the balcony, watching as stallions and mares of all shapes and sizes flooded into the town's largest structure. Though the welcome break for the desolate solitude of the jungle was nice, Reckoning had to admit that as his eyes searched the crowds for threats, he found himself bored.
How long have you 2 been waiting for me?
He inquired, hoping to strike up some sort of conversation.
Since yesterday afternoon. We charioted Twilight Sparkle down here. You know, the princess's personal student? I'm not that old, Star. I remember Twilight, even if I've never actually met her. What's she doing down here on her own?
Apparently, she organized the celebration. We stopped watching her after we dropped her off. We've been digging up for threats since then. Which reminds me, if you see a pink Earth Pony mare or a blue Pegasus mare and either has saddlebags, let me know. Let's hear. You're joking, right? The loose cannon butted in, gesturing around. I didn't turn up anything on my rounds. Hard to have a real nutcase in a town of 40 ponies.
Not a real military threat. I'd just as soon have saved the embarrassment of a practical joke to the princess.
Star wore a stray smile that belied his imagination, before it was stolen away by reality.
Don't get comfortable. Something's going on down there. The commander's been on edge since this morning.
Loose Cannon shot a quick glance sideways to the 2 stallions. You know why, right? I heard he just got back from a mission. It wasn't much of a surprise that Reckoning hadn't heard. News didn't get to Sprika very often. It was, however, a big deal when the commander went out to deal with something himself. That was, after all, what the entire rest of the honor guard was for. He was, therefore, incredibly surprised by Morningstar's conversation.
He went to Suida. He took on Lieutenant On and Lieutenant Flag.
Reckoning's jaw dropped. Soldier On and White Flag?
Are we going to war with the Boers?
No, of course. Star's attention was torn away by a glance at the little orange filly darting around on a scooter. He put on his best guard's pony voice as he shouted down to her.
You're going to have to leave that outside, kid!
The filly moped a bit under the demand, but complied without further fuss. Having resolved the dire threat that a child scooter presented their nigh immortal ruler, Morningstar turned back to Dead Reckoning. We wouldn't have the Summer Sun celebration right now if we were looking at a war, Corporal. Assert your business was peaceful. Yeah, right. Loose Cannon nickered, holding a hoof to her momentarily masculine mouth to avoid a further break in composure. Keep telling yourself that. But on that topic, why the hate is the celebration here? Look at this place! Reckoning took in the surroundings. It was very small, barely more than a village, bursting into scenes for the number of visitors who had slipped down for Canterlot. Cannon continued in a mocking voice. Welcome to Ponyville, capital of nowhere. Population 12. Morningstar responded deadpan.
He was the princess's assistant, Cannon.
That doesn't make it right, you know, Star. Remember when she made Flag stand in as Princess Platinum in the heartwarming pageant? The other two identical white stallions stared with a small chuckle at the thought. Yet another inside joke Reckoning had missed in exile. He shook his head before his eye locked onto an incredibly unexpected sight.
Is that a dragon?
What? Morningstar's gaze snapped to where Reckoning was pointing. The creature in question was much smaller than he had feared.
Oh yeah, that's Spike. Not a big deal. The purple mare is there as Twilight Sparkle. Her assistant, or he's her assistant or something.
Reckoning laughed.
Wait, you're telling me that little dragon is the one we freaked out about over when it broke through the roof of the princess's school?
Yeah, strong magic runs in their family. Star smiled. Rumor has it that her brother is going to replace Captain Vigil. Suddenly intense, Reckoning turned away from the baby dragon to the young mare.
What happened to the captain?
Nothing. She's retiring. Loose Cannon smiled as wryly as he could imagine. You might try sometime, geezer.
Again, Captain Officer Cannon, that is enough.
Morningstar nodded to the structure behind him.
The commander is inside with the princess. We should take up position in the crowd. I remind you that this is a public event, and unless something happens, we are currently representing the Royal Guard. No scaring civilians, and no magic. Restrain yourselves.
The Pegasi moved swiftly as there was their nature. The room was filled to brimming with ponies. After the floor and balconies had been filled, some of the civilian Pegasi had taken to the air, in a way that strictly violated Royal Guard security protocols. Fortunately to them, the Honor Guard were far more forgiving, especially in a backwater town like Ponyville. At the front of the room, a small raised platform, a brown mare with graying hair had addressed the audience. Fillies and gentlecoats, as a member of Ponyville, it is my great pleasure to announce the beginning of the Summer Sun celebration. The ponies cheered, though the guards' pony were too busy sweeping the crowd to join in. In just a few moments, she continued, our town will witness the magic of the sunrise and celebrate this, the longest day of the year. Reckoning felt Loose Cannon lead up against his side.
20 bits says the commander is standing behind her. No pony knows this.
Looking up the rafters, railings, and decorations of the room, the scout nodded. You're on. Unaware of the betting going on in her audience, the mayor's speech continued. And now, it is my great honor to introduce to you the ruler of our land, the fairy pony who gives us the sun and moon each and every day, the good, wise, the bringer of harmony to all Equestria. Eyes up, Princess Celestia! Yes, I watched the episode that much I could do it. A fanfare played. Burr, 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 burr. Curtains were raised, and a sudden shock swept over the room. What?
What's going on, Star?
I don't know. His wings spread out wide, ready to wield magic instead of take flight. After a moment of desperate scanning, he nodded toward a particular part of the crowd.
Look at Sparkle.
He gestured toward the princess's student, who was staring up the glass roof with a terrified expression on her face. From where they were standing, the guards' ponies couldn't see what had frightened her, but they already had enough evidence to know something was going on. As ponies bickered and whispered in fear and shock, the three trained soldiers looked to one another. Star was again the first to speak.
We don't know if this is real. Remember, keep calm. We don't need the crowd involved, but arm up. Are you sure this isn't just one of her pranks?
Reckoning asked hurriedly.
If you've ever seen the commander this morning, you'd know.
In the course of the discussion, Cannon had stood her shoes in blood steel. I'm heading into the back. Without another word, the youngest of the three guards was off in the air.
This can't be good.
The mayor raised her head and spoke up, trying to gather the crowd's attention. Remain calm, everybody. This must be a reasonable explanation. Ooh, I love guessing games. Is he hiding? If the princess or the commander were fighting, they would have seen something. Reckoning's body flared, as his instinct screamed out at an unseen danger. Every few moments, his head would duck, bob, or shift suddenly, but nothing came of the erratic moments. Morningstar nodded.
It's too quiet. I'm heading back. Watch the ground.
The Pegasus guard was beaten to the mark by a white young unicorn, who had nearly shrieked her discovery as she emerged from the princess's back room.
She's gone! Ooh, she's good.
The rest of the crowd gasped as one. Meanwhile, loose cannon soared back from one of the town hall's less focal side doors. Close against her body with one foreleg was a lacquered black helmet with gilded trim. Both of the other guards' ponies recognized it instantly.
They're gone. I bet the princess teleported them.
It was a desperate statement, devoid of any actual fate. The helmets told it all. Something was very wrong, in a way none of them had ever faced before. Instincts honed over years began to kick in, ready to organize a search for the culprit. No longer did the crowd or the decency of control matter. The princess had been threatened. Only blood could pay that toll. Another set of gasps drew their attention. What followed was a swirling mist around the uppermost balcony. The white mare darted around the stairs in fear as the guards pointed and addressed the situation. "Unicorn magic?" Reckoning asked. Morningstar nodded, even as he pulled across the thick stony black shoes from his armor and placed it on one of his forehooves. They were lodestone, a rare and powerful mineral known to destruct mana, but incredibly dangerous to whatever unfortunate pony was on the receive end. As he adjusted his equipment, the lieutenant began to give his directions. "Unicorn, Cannon, you and I are going to close the melee. I'll try to take the horn. You go for body blows. Injure, don't kill. We need her to find the princess. Reckoning, I want you to..." The commands were cut off by a burst of light and a crack of thunder, before a frighteningly familiar being burst into the wings.
Oh no. Nightmare Moon!
"Is that..." Reckoning began, unable to bring himself to finish the thought. It was hard to have grown up in Equestria without recognizing the face, even as stylized as it was usually depicted. An annual holiday at the end of harvest season made it sure of such a fact.
It's Nightmare Moon!
Ken hissed before flaring her wings. Morningstar held out a stiff arm, and the gung-ho mare heeded his restraint. "How do we know that isn't the princess?" the lieutenant snapped. "What?" Reckoning was momentarily rendered speechless. "You're joking, Star! Look at her! Didn't you ever go out? No joking, Cannon!" Star barely kept himself from yelling. "She's the princess's size, not like a normal alicorn, and she has the magic mane. I don't want to risk hurting her if she's been, I don't know, possessed or something. Hold back, but be ready. As soon as we have the information, we move!" Seeing a familiar glint in Loose Cannon's disguised eyes, he added another few words. "That's an order." Nightmare Moon spoke, with an echoing tone that froze the blood and chilled the hearts of even the hardened soldiers.
Oh, my beloved subjects, it's been so long since I've seen your precious sun-lovely faces.
"Not the princess! Not the princess!" Cannon hissed to her commanding officer. "Quiet!" Star answered in a barely restrained whisper. Some insane, brave, civilian mare with a vibrant rainbow mane rose up into the air, shouting at the intimidating Billing.
What did you do to our princess?
Reckoning and Ken shared a glance when the mare attempted to charge at Nightmare Moon head-on, only to be stopped by another pony who bit her tail. Nightmare Moon unleashed a chuckle, responding sarcastically to what she clearly deemed an insignificant threat.
Why, am I not royal enough for you? Don't you know who I am?
Oh, my guessing names. Huggy Smokes. How about Green? Oh, no. By
Does my crown no longer count now that I have been in prison for 1,000 years? Did you not recall the legend? Did you not see the signs?
When Twilight Sparkle spoke over the murmuring crowd, everything else fell into silence.
I did, and I know who you are. You're the Mare of the Moon. Nightmare Moon!
The crowd gasped in shock. Their fears realized and stated as fact. This creature was that of their childhoods, come to feast on their flesh. For her part, Nightmare Moon seemed amused.
Well. Some pony who remembers me. Then you also know why I'm here.
Twilight gave a subtle nod, struggling to speak.
You're here to...
The words couldn't come. The evil alicorn gave off another laugh.
Remember this day, little ponies, for it was your last. From this moment forth, the night will last forever!
Her overdramatic laughter was accompanied by a storm of fierce lightning that descended from the misty aura overhead and extended of her ghostly mane. The mayor pointed a commanding hoof at the mare, bellowing at the top of her lungs, "Seize her! Only she knows what the princess is!" She had no true authority over the honor guard, but the prompt was enough to push loose cannon over the edge. She took off into the air, flying straight for Nightmare Moon. Star and Reckoning followed suit, unwilling to let their comrade face danger alone. "Stand back, you fools!" Nightmare Moon ordered, turning their way. Her slitted, feline eyes winked with the power of a terrible magic, and the storm around her grew. Then the magic grew, obscuring her eyes with raw light. The shadowy auroras surrounding her had stopped their flight too far away from any of them to even strike at her archaic turquoise armor. Star's special shoes were making slow headway through the forest, but Reckoning and Cannon held still. The latter, defined more by her focus on battle than a fear of the unreal around her, struck her four hosts together for a thunderclap. Nightmare Moon found the magical attack amusing, and broke out again into a sickening laugh. As he did, the sound was echoed a dozen times. Bolts of pure electricity danced within the shadowy veil, until at last they were let free. Cannon took the first hit, being flung back to the far side of the room. Reckoning didn't last much longer, as a searing bolt of arcane energy struck his chest. He could feel his golden armor ignite like fire, as searing power coursed through his chest. He was thrown across the room as well, only though the shift of his body weight let him know that this was the case. The pain of the electric shock had stolen from his sight and sound, and even the feeling of the air and stone against his coat. He skittled painfully to the side. The world returned only just in time to see Nightmare's unbridled aurora flee through the open doors. The brave Rainbow Mare charged after the fiend, shouting, "Come back here!" When Dead Reckoning finally rose to his shaking hooves, it was with the help of a white-coated mare bearing a red cross for a cutie mark. "Are you all right, officer?" He tried to tell her yes, but all that came from his foot was a desperate wheeze. His hooves revolted, and he barely kept his stance to his wings. "Corporal!" It was Morning Star's voice, which was followed closely by his welcoming support under the scout's other wings. Propped between the two ponies, Reckoning was able to stretch his legs and endure but imaginable agony that accompanied the motion.
"I'll live!"
he managed to mutter through gritted teeth.
"How's loose cannon?"
The civilian smiled.
Your friend is out cold, but I don't see much of the way of burns or damage. I'll look at him in a moment. You were awake, so we had a bigger risk of shock and trauma."
Reckoning saw a glance at Star, whose slow but steady nod told a very different story. Slowly, the two guards' ponies turned to their third companion. Loose Cannon, still guarded in magic armor, was slowly twitching on the floor of Ponyville's town hall. Her form showed no burns or scarring, just a pristine white coat. Unlike the civilian, both guards' ponies knew for what it was, an illusion.
"Miss, thank you for your help, but I think you should get home."
Morningstar's direction sounded more like a desperate plea.
With respect, sir, you and your team are in no condition to...
Reckoning ripped off his helmet and threw it to the ground. She gasped as his face changed, but the fear didn't last long. Her eyes met his one with the force of magic. He spoke bluntly.
"Leave us alone! Go look after the rest of the town!"
Without a word, she turned and fled. No sooner had the door swung shut than Reckoning crumpled, his wings folded.
"Are you actually okay, Reckoning?" "Steering a pony takes too much magic,"
he answered, forcing himself up again by balancing on Star's back.
"Did she hit you too?"
The lodestones took most of it," Star answered, "but I don't know if I'll be flying for distance for a while." The two exchanged an awkward silence, before an unspoken consensus was reached. With a slow limp, Lieutenant Star helped Dead Reckoning make his way over to Loose Cannon's fallen body. They knew what they would find underneath. The illusion pervaded above all else. Star's foot or hose gently undid Cannon's clasp. Even before they were done, the stench of burning hair filled the air. Dead Reckoning looked down at himself in the canoe. Deep in the heart of the Zabrigan jungle, I realized that one of his forehosts was clutching the scar he received that day. His words had trailed off for a moment, and shook himself to regain his focus. You don't want to know what she looked like. He then turned around and sat facing Rainbow Dash. A sudden fatigue set over his body. He didn't feel like anything else needed to be said. Rainbow's expression was unreadable and indescribable. Had he shattered her hero? Or perhaps himself? The answer would no doubt come. When Rainbow's voice finally arrived, it was defensive, almost coming off as a shout.
But that wasn't really her! Nightmare Moon was a different pony! A monster! One who would never kill some pony else!
Would you believe that if it was your friend? If it was Twilight Sparkle?
Then, abruptly, the hatred was gone from his words, from his body. He didn't so much loosen as simply collapse, with shoulders sagging and neck barely managing to hold his head aloft. I don't know. The old sorcerer didn't put any emotion into acknowledgement.
I'll do this with you. I hope you save her, but I'm doing it for Celestia, because it's my duty.
He turned around to the front of the boat, looking out the river, and I don't have to like it. Shining Armor awoke in a rather mild pain that warmed beneath the flesh of his rigid right front fetlock. He could feel the bandages covering the same hoof, as well as the needle attached to his neck. The beaming of machines and sterile scent of the air completed the scene of a hospital room, even before he opened his eyes. It was surprisingly bright when he finally did take a look around. White puffy clouds were everywhere, and everything. Cloudsdale was familiar, though it took him a bit longer to remember the spell that let him wander under white surfaces.
Hey, he's awake!
Shining Armor turned in bed to a pair of occupied chairs occupying the wall of his room. The first momentarily held going solo, who was now hovering beside the guard's pony with a smile.
You feeling all right, Shining?
For what I just went through? He let out a confident laugh. Can't say it's that bad now.
Good.
She walked up to him, smiling. Then, without warning, struck him as hard as she could manage on the shoulder of his previously unwounded leg. Ow!
What were you thinking, leaving me behind like that? Then you go running into a lightning factory wearing middle shoes? Are you insane?
Yeah, actually. Thanks for that. He had to admit, it was a good punch. He rolled his shoulder and then bluntly rolled out of bed, catching himself on 3 hooves. It was strange to realize that the spell holding him on Kali's surface was still alive and strong. How long was I out?
Just a couple hours. The doctors actually said you would have woken up sooner if you weren't so sleep-deprived. You're lucky. Some second-degree burning, but nothing that won't heal if you stay off that hoof.
He smiled, pulling the injured appendix closer to his torso. Did you bring me here? She shook her head.
Well, not alone anyway. Not long after you set off half the thunderheads of Cloudsdale, the Wonderbolts showed up. She then put on a teasing smile. If you weren't so heavy, I might have been able to take you up here myself.
Funny, he replied straight-faced, with a deadly serious tone, before a bit of a smile broke onto his lips. Did he grab go-between?
Yeah, I guess you hit him pretty hard. They took him upstairs for x-rays. I can take you up, but the Wonderbolts are there, watching him. I didn't know they were guards ponies.
They barely are, Shining answered, with a more joking tone than an actual derision. They're all in the National Guard. We mostly use them for recruitment posters, honestly. But every so often they get in call for a first response, or something that we need done fast.
Yeah, but you're married now.
Going Solo dug out of the room before Shiny could respond. The little unicorn rolled his eyes, but took the time to replace his enchantment armor before following her. It didn't take long to navigate up the 2 floors and down a long hallway. Flying tiled architecture of pillars and perfectly smooth walls supported baby blue doors, set apart only by the numbered plates and clipboards of medical information attached to each. The door they actually were after was quite obvious, set apart by blue jumpsuited Pegasi flanking it. At his rather painful approach, they turned and saluted. Ugh, at ease, Shining sputtered, upon reaching a decent speaking distance. Is he awake? Yeah, but he hasn't said anything to us. He answered the larger of the two, a light gray stallion with a green and white striped mane. Shining had to force himself not to yell at the pony for his lack of discipline in addressing a superior officer. It was old guards pony saying that the sun could burn out and the oceans dry up, but a real guards pony CEO would still be shouting. The thought earned a quick chuckle, before he approached the door to go between his room. You've been on duty long enough. Tell your, Captain? Yes, sir. Captain Spitfire. He answered to stop near the door. I'll go get her. No, don't bother. Just tell her to meet me in front of the hospital in an hour. Got it! With curt nods, the two Wonderbolts flew off, earning a right glares from the medical staff as they passed. Left alone, Shining and Solo spared each other a quick glance, before opening the door to their prisoner's room and stepping inside. Apart from a decidedly raised shaven spot on his neck, go-between wasn't worse for the wear. Said raw flesh bore a small burn, but it was the sort that would clearly heal in time, perhaps even without leaving behind a scar. He laid, hoof-cuffed to a hospital bed, with an obvious fear on his face. Shining paced up to his bedside rather directly, but did not address the accused. Instead, his horn released a faint stream of mana, was slowly poured over and through the other pony.
What are you doing?
Trying to learn something about Masquerade's magic. Shining focused on his sixth sense, absorbing the strange inputs from the base of his horn. To describe them was to explain a painting to the blind, or music to the deaf. With each second, his brow creased deeper and deeper, until his face broke into an outright skull, and his magic ceased to flow.
What's wrong? Are you all right?
Fine, he snapped before shaking his head to regain his composure. In a better world, we have time to talk to my sister about this. But I guess we'll have to make do.
What did you learn?
Masquerade put a spell on him to shield him from unicorn magic. It's an illusion of pain. He neglected to add that the magic was completely beyond his comprehension. It led to his mind the sort of thing Twilight would bring home from studying theory with Celestia. Once more, he found himself regretting his lack of a more formal magical education. Shining gently tapped Go-Between on the side. His eyes squeezed open slowly to look upon the guard's pony as companion. Almost immediately, he tried to flee, only to realize the bonds holding him to his bed. When the futility of action settled in his mind, he relaxed and sighed, clear and given up. In that frail, collapsed state, he muttered under his breath,
What do you want?
Masquerade. Shining stated forcefully, I need her location.
Is it worth letting me go?
Shining took a deep breath. It'll be up to the princess, but I might persuade her to leniency. Go-Between interrupted with a fierce shake of his head.
I'm looking at the scales no matter what, guard's pony. I know what I did.
His face grew grim.
So you undo these cuffs right now, and let me walk away scot-free, or you'll get nothing from me.
Shining leaned forward with intensity in his face. Princess Luna is going to die, Go-Between! Tell me what you know! He responded with a stern refusal.
I'm going to die, Captain. You know what I want. So let me go, or you'll get nothing.
It's not happening. Shining Armor shook his head.
I'll put in a good word with... Your good word isn't worth 2 bits to me! As far as the law cares, I killed Luna as much as Masquerade or whoever hired her did. So screw your good word! I was dead the moment you caught me.
Shining shook his head slowly. Going Solo trapped the guard's pony on the shoulder, then cocked her head toward the room's door. He allowed himself to be allowed out into the hospital hall, where the Pegasus pulled the cloudy doors firmly shut. All around, orderlies were moving about casually, glancing at the clipboards or calmly making their way between patients who needed to be seen. It clearly wasn't an urgent wing, and the quiet was a welcome break for the recent offense. The guard's pony's moment of relaxation was stolen away by his unlikely companion, who posed a curious question.
Why don't you give him what he wants?
Because he actually did it! Shining literally yelled the words, gathering the attention of several Pegasus orderlies. He glanced around awkwardly, scratching the back of his neck with a hoof. Sorry. Solo chuckled when the medical staff finally decided that the accidental outburst wasn't worth pursuing.
Fine. He's pissing me off too, but we need to get him to talk, right?
Not necessarily. He'll have to have a file or a reference somewhere in his home, or his warehouse, or something that we can follow up on. The issue is time.
You said 3 days, right? Solo cocked her head to the side. Is that enough?
I don't know. Shining's gaze danced nervously around the sterile hospital hallway. If he knows where she is, we'd be fine. But he might be just another middle pony. If it takes 2 days to dig something up, that would be too much. I don't want to be gambling with a life in my hooves. But I also don't want some pony like him on the streets again. We might never catch him.
Solo nodded, then looked awkwardly. You know, we, could do it Grizzly's way.
What?
Shining wore his almost confused expression. You know, good cop, bad cop, rough him up a bit.
The smuggler glanced around quickly, and then leaned up to Shiny's ear to whisper.
Break his wings?
Absolutely not, the guard's pony responded, refusing to acknowledge the temptation Masquerade's spell offered. That's not what my argument... That was exactly what my argument with Red Ink was about! I won't have the Royal Guard be known for intimidation, let alone torture!
Yeah, but isn't it worth saving Princess Luna?
Shining shook his head slowly. Once you cross that line, even for something like saving a life, you destroyed the reputation for the entire Guard. Especially for me, as the captain. Then the other Guard's ponies will see it as it was okay. And soon enough, you have Red Ink or the Honor Guard!
The Honor Guard?
Solo raised a brow. Shiny shook his head and smiled as dishonestly as he could manage. Just guards pony stories. Rumors. Forget I said anything.
Right.
So he let the syllable hang for a moment.
Well, we have to go between to talk somehow, if you won't hurt him. And I'm not saying you need to, just a thought. You might have to give him what he wants.
She closed her eyes and thought for a moment, then shrugged.
Got any ideas?
A reluctant sigh gave her the answer he was looking for. No, you're right. Saving the princess is far more important than punishing him. I'll make him a deal. Together, the two returned to the stallion's hospital room, where he looked at them with a mixture of hope and amusement.
Had a nice talk.
In a burst of magical power, Shiny's horn ignited, shattering the cuff on Go-Between's right foreleg into a mangled mass of metal. A moment later, the second followed suit. The Pegasus tried to fly for the door, only to find himself be caught in the grip of equally potent magic. Where? Shiny's demand was sharp and plain.
I don't know,
Between answered bluntly.
but there's a Marion.
His words were cut off by a glow of midnight blue magic, which engulfed his skull and emanated bright beams from his eyes. His mouth hung open, obviously trying to scream, but no noise escaped his lips. Desperate to stop whatever it was that was happening, Shining thrust his own magic into the rampant spell. His was a simple dispelling charm, powered by the force of his power rather than the knowledge of focus. For his efforts, the guard's pony was once again seized by the illusion of unknowable pain. It was far stronger than when the spell had overcome him at Go-Between's warehouse. Between the magic holding his host in the Cloud 4 and the delicate energy suspending the Pegasus in the air, it took some time to gather the focus and power necessary to undo the torturous magic. His flesh burnt and his blood boiled. Knives tore through his chest and legs. 1,000 times over, brute force tore his hone from his head. Blunt blows shattered his legs. Unlike the unfortunate Pegasus, Shiny's throat was capable of at least a horrifying scream. It ended all at once, for no clear cause. He was barely standing upright, and tears poured from his eyes. As the armored stallion felt a comforting wing wrap around his neck, his only thought of happiness was that the pain had not been as bad as what Professor Cloudy Mirror had shown him the first time Shining Armor had the misfortune of facing such a spell.
You all right, Captain?
Shining's still unfocused eyes jumped at the surprising voice. It hadn't been going solos. Instead, a bright orange mare stood beside him, garbed in vibrant blue and gold jumpsuit. It still took him far too long to put two and two together. Spitfire?
Easy, Captain. On your hooves.
The Wonderbolt helped the unicorn to rise, where he was able to take the sun and changes to the hospital room. Go-Between lay slumped in the clouds. He looked tranquil. Only the shining slight side of the magical glow told him that the conspirator was dead, and not merely sleeping. The wall had been completely taken down. Puffs of cottony white hung in the air as the Pegasus' equivalent of rubble. Apparently, the Wonderbolts had been in too big of a hurry to use the door. At the far side of the room, Going Solo was laying in her chest and hoof cuffs, pinned down by a pair of other highly trained stunt flyers.
Oh, you're up?
She observed sarcastically.
Think you could get these two off me?
She's... Shining put a hoof to his forehead at the sudden onset of another pang of pain. She's fine, Stallions. Let her go. He didn't pay attention to the awkwardness that ensued, instead having his focus drawn to Spitfire.
Now, Captain, are you okay?
I'll survive, he answered bluntly. I've been through worse.
What actually happened to you? The mayor pressed. I've never heard somebody scream like that, and...
Unicorn magic. It was just an illusion. None of it was real. Unfortunately, it was real for him. He took a deep breath and let that go between his corpse and shook his head.
He was our lead on the mayor that tried to assassinate Princess Luna.
One of the younger Pegasi let out an audible gasp. Somebody tried to! His words stopped when Shiny's telekinesis clenched his muscles shut. It wasn't quite as elegant a solution as Twilight Zipper, but it proved effective against the rebellious Guards Pony's recruits. We've been keeping it quiet for a reason, Shining muttered. We didn't want some pony like this one getting ahead of us. He gestured to the corpse. Not that it matters now. Captain Spitfire? Were circumstances better, she might have laughed at his confusion.
Between us, it's Lieutenant. Don't use that title much.
I can imagine. Any case, I need you to get whatever guards ponies you can, and do a full investigation of the Equestria and Shipping Services warehouse, as well as go between's house. You're looking for any store carrying contracts, but especially for references to some pony named Masquerade.
I'll get on it,
Spitfire told him firmly. This is time-sensitive, Lieutenant. Make it your top priority.
Of course.
She nodded to her subordinates, who followed her to the room's now quite open wall. They spread their wings to fly, but Spitfire hesitated at the last moment.
Oh, by the way, Captain,
Mr. Lining wanted a word with you. You mean Silver Lining, the counselor?
Yeah, he has an office on the Hurricane Boulevard, though I can understand if you're too busy.
No, I'll check it out. Let me know if you turn anything up.
Yes, sir.
With that, the pony shot off to the hospital in a blaze of fire. A moment later, going slow, approached Shining.
So, what do we do now?
Pray that they find something in his offices, or that something will come up. Solo nodded, then gently prodded Shining out of the room with her wing. As they walked through the hospital, she nuzzled against him consolingly.
I don't know if it'll help, but I'm going to talk to some ponies I know around town. It's not likely, but they might know something about him we can use.
Shining Armor offered a grim nod of acknowledgement. They continued his slow pace out of the hospital. Something about the way he carried himself, even walking on 3 legs, caused the medical staff to leave him about his business. No pony even addressed the grim unicorn, instead fleeing from his path as he continued on the depressingly small, single-minded path. His hopes were falling apart around his ears. His investigation had truly hit a dead end, and what was most likely the important case of his career was all but lost. He feared Luna would die. He feared Red Ink would be proven right. He feared the assassin would get away. His fears permeated his steps, so much that the world seemed to fade away, save the strip of cloud that led him to his unfamiliar destination. When he reached the place, it was as if the ornate script of the sign were taunting him.
Lining a company designed in architecture, where every cloud has a silver lining.
It was hard to see the silver lining to the depth of his only lead. Ignoring the sign, the unicorn made his way into the building. A pair of transparent cloud doors opened at the slightest touch of his shoulder into an opulent reading room containing a dozen seats, a desk of cloud made to resemble fine dark wood, and even a small fountain.
Can I help you?
The secretary, a middle-aged Pegasus mare with her mane pulled back into a tight bun, looked up from her papers aghast.
Ah, a unicorn?
Captain Shining Armor, Royal Guard. Shining put on a smile that felt exactly the opposite of inside. I'm here to see Counselor Lining.
Oh, of course, Captain.
She gestured with a wink toward the door behind the desk.
He's in the end office. Straight ahead, you can't miss it.
She offered him a gentle smile.
Oh, and he prefers Mr. Lining?
I'll keep that in mind. Resuming his slow gait, Shining trod through the indicated doorway and progressed down the hall. Like the rest of the structure, the cloud here was of almost unbelievable detail. In the hallway and the walls bore the color or texture of waves. On the soft blues and vibrant whites ebb and flow across their perfectly smooth surface. Hanging atop the walls were dozens of paintings in expensive frames.
Most were impossible-looking structures with towering spires and magnificent pillars. Others showed the faces of Pegasi, labeled with little plaques and names and dates Shining neither recognized nor cared about. The last door at the end of the hallway opened up with a gentle push, revealing another large room. Though the door one opened silently, Shining knew his presence had been noted when a voice from a further room called out to him.
I'll be out with you in a moment.
The unicorn looked around the room, and then after a moment's contemplation, found himself a comfortable seat. In point of fact, the way that his bank sat in the cushion of pure cloud was a luxury he would likely never forget. It was as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders, allowing him to perfectly appreciate the room. There were more wonders here amidst the furniture, but the one feature that caught Shining's attention most poignantly was an enormous portrait of a stallion, hanging in the center of the largest wall, opposite a pair of windows. Nearly as tall as Shining himself, it portrayed a formidable stallion with a dark gray fur and a steel blue mane. Its face was completely devoid of emotion, but its keenly focused eyes told a story of a poignant will and unimaginable determination. Decorating his head was a lacquered black helmet with gilded edges. Shining heard another pony approach, but didn't look away from the portrait. It was impossibly familiar.
I see you like my painting. You like it?
Is that the commander? Shining asked, finally tearing his eyes away to look at Silver Lining. The aging Pegasus wore an impressive grin beneath his bushy mustache as he nodded. I'm impressed. You recognize Commander Hurricane so easily. Most Pegasi don't. Shining decided not to mention he had attended an entirely different commander, instead of allowing the counselor to continue his speech.
He's my ancestor, by some crazy chain of parents or something. But Pegasi don't usually care for much for that sort of thing. The princess gave it to me as a gift after I did a contract for her, and I didn't want to put it in some dusty storeroom.
He laughed.
I'm rambling, aren't I, Captain? Please, step into my office.
The two made their way into the much smaller room of the lounge, occupied by a real wooden desk and 3 seats. The walls were densely packed with shelves of colored cloud, holding books and models and reasonably sized pictures taken with a real camera instead of painstakingly painted over the course of hours.
I'm glad you could take the time to visit me, Captain. First of all, I heard you've been hurt in the cumulonimbus factory. Feeling all right?
Yeah, I suppose, Counselor Lining. The answer was far from the truth, though the ill sensation Shining was experiencing had nothing to do with the wounds from that battle.
That's pretty good to hear.
The stallion nodded, smiling. His mane, tail, and mustache were a surprisingly rich black for the clear age that showed in the wrinkles worn into his face by a healthy lifetime of smiles. His coat was a gray much better fit his age, though judging by his sheen, it might have always been that color.
You can call me just Silver Armor, or Mr. Lining if you prefer that. I'm only on the council for business reasons.
All right. Shining took a slow breath. How did you know I was in a fight there?
Well, I do own a seasonal share of that factory.
The old Pegasus shrugged with his wings, rather a strange sight for Shining Armor.
Not that I run anything there, but it does cut costs if you're able to buy clouds from yourself. I imagine you don't want to be stuck hearing about my business, though. Tell me, since you found time to come visit me, have you caught this masquerade?
Shining looked away slowly. No, I'm working on it.
I see. Well then, if I could be of assistance, please let me know.
I doubt it, Silver. Shining allowed himself another long, slow breath before he finally gave in. I came to Cloudsail looking for Go-Between. It was one of the contacts he used to hire Masquerade.
Go-Between? Honestly?
The architect spared no effort in the expression of his surprise.
I mean, he was never much of a social pony, but he seemed like a decent stallion.
Most criminals are. The back of Shining's mind laughed at the idea, reflecting on the hoofful who had held his company in the recent days. He was my lead on Masquerade, but she had pulled a spell on him. He died before he could tell me anything. The old pony didn't show quite as emotion as Shining had expected. But the sorrow he offered did seem genuine.
That is tragic. Well, I wish I could tell you more, but I never got to know many of the stallion's business partners myself.
That's fine, Shining responded, expecting nothing more. His eyes wandered lazily about
about the room before diving into sudden focus at a tiny picture frame on the shelf to Silver's shoulder. Is that Rainbow Dash? Silver's tight-lipped frown turned into a proud smile as he turned in seat toward where Shining had gestured. With gentle hooves, he pulled the picture frame off the shelf and set it down on his desk. Yeah, my granddaughter. She's actually why I asked you to come see me. There was sort of an awkward pause before Shining's mind ground down its gears. You're Rainbow's grandfather? He found himself staring at a picture of a blue filly, much smaller, but with the same defiant hunger for fame in her eye, straddling the back of a younger, happier Silver Lining. Yes. The architect glanced away wistfully. We don't speak much anymore. She's too busy with her friends, saving the world and flying around. I still worry about her. He took a slow breath that seemed to suggest his actual age, before his eyes turned to Shining Armor. I heard rumors from the newspapers. Some say my granddaughter died. Others tell me she saved the princess with another sonic rainbow. I even read one that said she joined you on the guard. Is that funny? The humor on his face died slowly. Probably not to you. It's a long story. What I want to know, Captain, is the truth. Where is she? I don't know where she is, but she's very much alive. Shining smiled, momentarily proud to be the bearer of good news for once. She joined up with the other guard, trying to... Are you alright, Mr. Lining? The sudden pause in his expression was brought out by the Pegasus' eyes pressing shut. It took him almost a minute to regain his composure, during which Shining simply sat quietly. At last, the old pony opened his eyes. The wrinkles of his face remained tightly pinched as he spoke. I'll be fine. This brings back bad memories. My son, Rainbow's father, died in the Dragon Wars when he was very young. I'm sorry. He did what he thought was right. Silver slowly picked up the picture and restored to its place on the shelf. It's good to at least know she's alive. Thank you for that, Captain. If you do see her soon, tell her I'd like to see her. Shining arched a brow. If you don't mind my asking, why don't you just go visit her in Ponyville? An old stallion's foolishness, he answered. Well, it's no particular secret that my business has been very successful. When Rainbow was younger, I tried to help make her way onto the Wonderbolts. Nothing as blunt as just bribing them, of course. I just wanted her to succeed on her own virtue. But I hired her private flight instructors, brought her the old Wonderbolts training hangar for practice. Eventually, she decided it was too much. I hurt her feelings. She wanted to make it on her own, so she just flew off. He glanced out the window wistfully. I suppose in the end, I'd just been afraid that she wouldn't want to see me. Shining wasn't quite sure what to say, as the elder stallion looked away with a sorrowful expression. A small thought nagged at the back of the guard's pony's mind. However, after a great deal of effort, it was finally able to make itself known. You said you brought the Wonderbolt's training hangar? Is that the same building Go-Between was using as his warehouse? The spark of curiosity was enough to pull Silver Lining out of his shallow sadness. I think so, yes. After Rainbow left, I sold it to him. A little spark recollection danced in his eyes. Actually, come to think about it, there was something strange about that. Hold on. Silver Lining turned around, pulling out a particularly old 3-ring binder, labeled with only a set of dates. He set the book on his desk and began flipping through it quickly, until with a sudden smile, he found a particular page. Yes, that's right. I've been expecting a bank statement, but Go-Between came forward offering to pay in cash. The statement, perhaps the biggest red flag of criminal activity in the world, raised an eyebrow from the captain of the Royal Guard. Shining shook his head. I know it sounds dirty, but it is legal. I went out of my way to keep records of payments. Look at... His words trailed off. Then without further word, his host twisted the binder around and pushed it forward, so it sat in plain sight in front of Shining Armor. The guard's pony read off where the Pegasus hoof indicated. Transfer from the First Bank of Equestria in the order of 130,000 bits? It's an expensive structure, Captain, but that's not the point. His hoof slid down a line. Shining continued. Paid by order of Masquerade Ball, West City Branch, 114 West Monument Street, Baltimore. Shining's eyes looked up from the page slowly, as an incredibly wide smile across his face. With a chuckle that shook his shoulders, the old pony nodded.
Glad I could be of service, Captain. Remember to tell Rainbow when you see her. And good luck.
Sonny pulled the paper out of the file, tucking it into his armor with magic. This was all the good luck I needed. Thundercrack's ring stuck out at an odd angle in its cast and sling, making it hard to sneak around. Nevertheless, at every corner, he gave a quick glance to check for Red Ink's lackeys or the doctors who would inevitably scold him for being out of bed. His journey was a short one, as the infirmary wasn't any great distance from the honor guard's underground section of the palace. To the guard's pony's relief, all of the Stalingradi soldiers were away in the field, giving him easy access to the commander's office. He walked past his own quarters, a small room with a desk, bed, and little else, without pause. The living spaces of his other real honor guard companions also passed without note, leading to the very end of the hall. There, the guard's pony did stop before a set of dozen broken, battered, and destroyed suits of armor. Crack didn't know the names of the ponies who died wearing them, but he did respect them. They had been the old commanders, the rare and heroic ponies who did the job no pony else could. It was a sad thought to think of the gilded armor of black trim being put in place on one of the stands. Tossing away the emotion, Craig pushed his way into what recently became Red Ink's office. The inside was still exactly the way the commander had left it. His half-organized, procrastinated paperwork spilled over the desk, behind his virtually untouched chair. A massive chart detailed which 2 or 3 honor guard officers were tasked with protecting the princess when he was forced to be absent. The sergeant noticed quite bluntly that the final column of the chart depicted the flourishing script, detailing how he and Morningstar had been scheduled to be present during the Royal Academy Award ceremony. The text clashed with the commander's blunt, scratchy script, and was obvious even at a glance who made the change. Thundercrack was again forced to discard his emotion and keep his attention on the self-assigned mission. He watched over the chart and tore it from the wall. Behind it was a small cabinet, bearing a few smiles of green fire. Beneath each was a careful label. Dead Reckoning was written in simple script beneath the first. The next 2 read Flying Ace, a loose cannon, held no vials. A rather cold testament to the sacrifices that they had made. Marathon, Mirror Image, Morningstar, and the one he was looking for. Soldier on. He removed the file tenderly and set it down on the desk, before claiming a quill and a scrap of paperwork with a blank back. He set about his work quickly.
On! They're saying you betrayed us, and honestly, I'm not sure what to believe. If it weren't for the princess, I'd say it was bullshit! No questions asked. I asked her about it, but when she came to visit me in the infirmary, the first part of me was tearing out over Rainbow Dash. She told me you killed another guard's pony. I want to assume that you didn't have a reason, but Shining Armor's office? I know how close you were to the commander. Obviously not that way, but for whatever he did for you in Stalingrad. So I have a pretty hard time believing you screw him over like this, let alone Morningstar. The princess dug up some old files, though, on you and Red Ink, and was surprised what they said. I underestimated you. I won't do it again. In the end, I'm really writing this because I don't want Red Ink to catch you, traitor or no. He's a jackass and a psychopath who doesn't understand the difference between making the hard choices we make and just taking the easy route every time. I want him out of the honor guard, so I'm writing this to warn you. The service says he's heading to Baltimore in search of you. If that's where you are, keep your head down. And if you really did betray the princess, you and I will be seeing each other again soon. Don't look forward to it. You know who wrote this.
His letter completed, Crack rolled up the message and stuffed it into the vial. Fire consumed it almost instantly, sending it off through the air in a trail of smoke. Then, without further action, he clamped a hoof down on the vial. It didn't take long for the fire to go out despite its magic. Satisfying his work, the guard's pony returned the empty vial to its place on the hidden shelf. He was right to replace the chart as it served as a covering, when something caught his eye. Besides the scratching that read Soldier On was another name, one that he clearly didn't realize. It began with Steel. The guard's pony laughed as he closed off the hidden cabinet and strode away. He finally knew the commander's name, and all he could think of was a simple question. Like horseshoes.